All right, then. It's 4:33. We can get started, and we'll have the recording if somebody wants to look back at this conversation. So, hello everyone. Good evening. I hope everyone is coping well with the weather. What should look like summers feels somewhere between summer and monsoon here in Nagpur. It's ever changing. While we can't predict what the weather will bring in the coming months, one thing is very certain. We, as the organizers of SUG Nagpur, are committed to bringing to you at least one informative session every month. So you may not know if it is going to be summers in the month of May, but one thing is sure that you're going to meet us again in yet another session of SUG Nagpur. That being said, let's get started. Continuing with the streak, I welcome you all to the SUG Nagpur's event for this month, which is going to be quite different from all the previous ones. Different, different in the sense that we will not be looking at any of the Sitecore's product in detail today, but we will be looking into a project implementation. In the next 1 hour, our speakers will walk us through the details of a migration of a huge website from XP to Headless XM, focusing majorly on how the team navigated through the challenges of migrating almost 2 lakh users, keeping their credentials intact and relevant in the new headless website. And talking about the speakers of today's insightful session, which is supported by Perficient, are two subject matter experts, Daivagna Nanavati and Akshay Barve. Daivagna is a is a Sitecore technology MVP working as a technical slash pre-sales and senior technology lead at Horizontal Digital. With over 15 years in IT and 5 plus years in Horizontal Digital, his experience spans across multiple industry domains on the development and techno sales side. In his own words, had he not been in IT, he would have been a chef or a photographer. Welcome, Akshay. Devagna. And talking about our second speaker, who is Akshay Barve, he is a technical slash developer, associate technology lead at Horizontal Digital. With around 9 plus years of experience, he is a passionate developer who likes to pursue continuous learning and exploring new Sitecore features. Outside of work, he enjoys traveling and spending time with his family and friends. We welcome you to Akshay. And that was all about our speakers for today. Before I pass it on to them, a quick note for our audience, which I think the regular ones will already know, that we take up the questions at the end. And if you have any questions or would like to add anything in the conversation, please put it in the chat window. Over to you, Akshay and Devagna.
Yeah. So I hope you guys are able to see the screen first of all.
Yes.
Perfect. So.
Surely. So before we start this, informative session, thank you for a brief introduction and thanks for pronouncing my name so correctly. Very few does it, so thank you for that. From Akshay, AB, and myself, we just want to pass on our word of thanks to Perficient to hosting us and give us the opportunity to speak about things which we felt that we should be shared with the community and the research that we did, so that not everyone spends the same amount of time and you get some insightful information from this session. Now, from the title, using magic of Sitecore SSC API for authorization and authentication in Headless XM. So what our purpose would be to show you is that in our live project or the website, which went just live with the huge data, what was the challenge that we were facing. We will share the actual information and the solution for that. But before that, what we will do is we'll also show you the nitty-gritties around that, so that everyone comes to the same page, and then from there onwards we will start bringing in more information in the demos so that you can connect the dots. So that's the overall theme for today. Now, if you go to the next slide, I think we can skip this one because I think Neha already introduced that very well. But yeah, a couple of links there. We have our blog link, and then I have this LinkedIn handle. You can just nudge me there, and we can connect there. Yeah, you can go next. This is for AB. You can also note it down. Of course, we're going to share this presentation, so you're going to have it. That's totally fine. Yeah, so let's set up some ground for this session today. So what we're going to do is, as I said, we are going to first talk about basics, and then we'll, start making a pile of some advanced information on top of it so that everybody understands. We definitely think that, there is no common sense in a team environment. Sometimes we think that, okay, this is very basic and everybody understands, but it's always better to call it out so that those who don't know it can benefit from it. So let's start with, what we'll do is this is the typical agenda. So we have around 15, 16, 17 minutes of slides where we will show you everything and, get you up to the speed, and then we'll get into the demos. Now, we will see, what JWT tokens are. Why JWT tokens? Because everything that we are going to show is revolving around the tokens and the JWT tokens, which Sitecore provides. And of course, the claims and stuff. Then we will also show you why we had to go through this, what we did for our customer. What was the scenario, where we had to think about what is the approach from now. We will show you the research and, things that we did for it. And of course, last but not the least, we will show you how everything is wired up and, from static to end, how everything is working to connect the dots for you. And we will have a demo of migration of the users. So we will actually run all the scripts, that we had, and then customization around it and all the nitty-gritties that we faced. We will also share that. And of course, a detailed demo from AB on API to walk through. So we will get into the code, we'll get into the business solution, we'll show you, how the configuration versus convention works in SSC and everything. And of course, at last, we will take the question and answer. And if we are not able to answer anything, we will make sure that we take it as a homework, and then probably we'll come up with the answer for you via Perficient platform or Subnagpur or whatever the way it's preferable. So I hope, with that, I think ground is set, so we can start talking about, first of all, we need to understand what is SSC. So I believe we already have been working. If we are working in Sitecore, we are already working with SSC API. It's so it stands for Sitecore Service Client, and it is a mechanism for client and server to connect in a way that in an API manner. Now, it provides two kinds of services. So basically, behind the scene, it is using ASP.NET Web API framework only. But the benefit of using SSC is that you get a lot of things out of the box using SSC APIs. So consider item service or entity service. All those things are provided by SSC. We'll also see what is JWT token in detail, and what is the format of JWT token. Why it is the industry standard that should be used. And of course, what are claims? Moving on. So as I said, there are two types of services that SSC provides: item service and entity service. Now, entity service is something that when you want to store a business object, a whole business object somewhere in your class or interface or somewhere, at that time, entity service comes into the picture. Sitecore out of the box doesn't provide any business object, what we call facility. But what it provides the scaffolding of the different things and model it will provide you, so that if you have a custom object which you want to store, you can use it. But item service is something that I think everybody will be familiar. If you want to get item by ID, right? We are using day in and day out. Now, as I mentioned earlier as well, this SSC is convention over configuration. So that means instead of figuring out everything by yourself, how to create a controller, how to create a repository, how to create a model, and how to connect everything. Instead, if you use this convention like service API controller, right? If you just inherit your class, then what happens is that a lot of behind the scene and scaffolding happens automatically, and you get a lot of out of the box facility available. And that's why it is meant to be used as a convention over configuration. You don't need to configure a lot of things. You can just get started with that. And as I mentioned, it uses ASP.NET Web API framework. So it is fully customizable. And as per your need, you can definitely customize and use existing class and existing method. For example, the user service.login and stuff, all those are out of the box available. We can easily make use of that and also extend them as well. So we are going to show you how we extend that in our case. Then comes the JWT, because now what we want to do is we want to kind of get closer to the understanding of everything before we jump onto the demo, so that you have all the hardwiring and understanding of it. Now, JWT stands for, JSON Web Tokens. Everybody, I think, nowadays uses JWT tokens. Now, they are open standard, that defines a compact and a self-contained way for, securely transmitting the information between two parties. And it is a proven standard and trusted by everyone. So it is important to understand that, what is contained inside JWT token. So if you see these 3 bullet points, header, payload, and signature, so you will get an encrypted token, but if you decrypt that token using the tools, you will be able to see that what are the things which are actually inside the JSON Web Tokens. So now if we can just move to the other slide and see the token. So this is the token where, for this webinar, we actually have the token. So what we did was we took that token and we decrypt that in the tool. So on the left hand side, you see it's a cipher token. It's an encrypted token, and of course it's a signed token. That means this token is it's not corrupted and its signature is valid and everything. And now on the right hand side, if you see what it says, it's a decoded version of it. So it has 3 sections, as I said: header, payload, and the signature. Now header is something, generally as a developer, you don't need to worry about it. It's just the information which says that what is kind of algorithm it is used to decrypt this. It is by default. So as you can see, algorithm is #256 and the type is JWT. And the section which is on the middle part, which is a payload, that makes sure that these are your claims. So this is the classical payload. So if I talk about a payload, by definition, that means whatever the data or the data model that you're transmitting over the wire, that's called a payload, right, to the API or something. Now, in this encrypted format, you will also get a payload. Now, payload is something you can modify. So if you want to add additional attributes to it, consider that you authorize the user and you want to add some more information, maybe user, and that rolls into payload just to make sure that you want to make use of it somewhere as per the business need. You can modify all those things on the server side and send the token back, and then token will have all the information. And the other is the signature. Signature is something, it's called JWS. So JWS means that it is not responsible for any encryption, but it makes sure that the signature is, the token is valid. The signature is, or the data is not manipulated from the receiver, and the moment it came from the sender, in between it is not been, played around with. It makes sure that that's what the JWT contains, all the information inside it. Now, as I said, it is very important to know that, why we had to do and do what we did, all the research and the approach that we wanted to do, token-based authorization, and why it was all needed. Now, that's where you will be able to connect your dots, where if you go to this particular diagram, this is our old system. So we had our Sitecore XP, everything was fine, and this is the classical architecture diagram, where if you see on the top, there's a visitor, and because it's a XP, right? So everything is at one place. Your content, your presentation, and everything is at one place. It's not decoupled. It's a monolith architecture. So we had this content delivery over there. We had a page, right? Login page. It's a classical login screen membership provider where users will put in the username and password. And then what used to happen was that it used to call the old SSC APIs for login, and we used to get the payload of user that, okay, this user is validated and this is the username and then first name, last name, whatnot, the user object. And then it used to traverse back to the content delivery, and then you see the flow, the extranet domain, right? So all those users which were from extranet domain used to get validated and logged in from that particular way, old classical way. And you see on the left, there is a core database. So that means all the users were in our Sitecore core database. All the 2.5 lakhs users that we had, which were active and were using our system, were in core database. Now, along with the core database, we have not shown our custom database, but we also had our custom database, custom SQL database, which was referencing this particular user IDs into different tables. So consider a scenario where if I'm marking something as a favorite, right? If I'm saving an article, right? All those data were getting stored in that particular custom database. So our purpose was that using this particular core DB's user ID, membership ID, user ID, we used to query that particular data and you get accumulated information on the dashboard that, okay, hey, you have saved this much data, you mark this product as favorite, all the dashboard data we used to show. And on the bottom flow, you can see those are the typical content management, CM instance where content ops used to log in, admin used to log in. Over there was no change, but what we needed to make sure was that all the content sources data were also successfully should migrate on our new platform, which is XM, and then they should be able to log in with the same username and password. So our ask was that we have XP system today, and then they were supposed to run a campaign where they will send out an email saying, hey, we are live with our new site, and to all the 2.5 lakhs users, and then the moment they click the login button, it will take them to a new site, and then they will provide the same username and password without worrying about what changed behind the scene. Actually, the big elephant of XP was changed to XM. It was all headless. Now things were hosted on Vercel, not on XP. So that was the challenge that we had. And now if you come to this particular diagram, this is our current scenario, XP. So that means if you see on the right hand side, I would like to start from the right hand side because this particular piece was missing on the previous diagram. Now, if you see, we have our core DB plus custom DB. So that means if you have an XM environment, you are going to get those three database, master, web, and core. Now, along with the core database, we also had our custom database, as I mentioned, which had the reference field. And our task was to, get the user login and still get the data without user, even worrying about if it's a new site or old site, they should still be able to log in and see the same kind of data which they were seeing previously. So for that, what we did was, if you see now we are logging in using the decoupled manner. So now the hit will come to the come from Vercel or Header, and then in between you can see the login API, our custom API layer. So what it used to do is now from the Vercel, the moment it hits our Next.js app or a front-end app, what it will do is it will make a call to our login API, server-side login API, which we're gonna have a walkthrough and the demo for the same, so you can connect the dots. And what it used to do is it will use the same SSC login API first, just to make sure that it authenticates the user and make sure that user is valid and password is valid. Once it is done, now here is the change that we implemented. So instead of sending the whole user back in a classical traditional membership API way, instead, what we did was we just written one token. So now this tokenized approach is available in SSC. We can see that the configuration, how it is done. But now we found a way to log in headlessly because now we have a token. That token is containing validity as well. That if this user is particular valid for this particular token, and subsequently. What it used to do is if everything is valid, it will return you the particular JWT token. Or if it's not, then what it will do is it will return you proper messages saying, hey, if the user is logged or user does not exist or whatever. So that was the overall flow that we implemented.
Okay, so now as we have seen the what and why of our session. Now let's have a look on how we did. So the first step obviously was to enable the JWT token, and for that we had to do some configurations, which we will be seeing in the next slide. Then after we had built up our custom API for login and all the possible operations that we had. So all the comms, as he already said, that all the comms between our custom DB and Sitecore DB membership table was through the user ID, which is the foreign key for all the tables in our custom database. And finally, we have the claims modification where we can add additional information to the claim. So by default, when we generate the token, Sitecore also does add some claims, but it adds only the user ID in the claims. But if we want to add some additional information according to our requirement, we can add that specific attribute to the claims, which will be obviously used in all the subsequent calls that will be happening after the login. So first, if we move to the next slide and see the first configuration. So this is the config which has all the possible configurations that we had to do, and these are the required configurations because all of them have to be enabled, and so all the information is already available on the net. It is something that is not very new to Sitecore, but it already existed. But here the point was that how we use it for our custom login API calls and also make them secure and persistent to the users. So as you can see, the most important configuration is at line number 7, where we have to enable the token authorization. By default, this token authorization is set to false, and along with this, we also have to provide a unique security key to the symmetric key signing provider, and this key goes in the connection string, just like the way it is shown in the screenshots. We just have to make sure that whatever value that we pass in the connection string, it should start with key equal to, and this is something like a thumb rule, and it is also documented. Now this is the basic diagram. So in our traditional XP environment, we had the ASP.NET session cookie and the whole session management on our CD server. But now, as we have a decoupled environment where the head is set somewhere else, we needed some way to still use the code maybe where we had already 2 lakh users. So if you look at this diagram of our login API, you will notice that no matter it is any kind of front end, it can be Vercel, Netlify, or an Azure static app. It will basically call the login API at first with the required credentials. Then it will first validate the user in the code database, and if the user is valid, it is going to send a JWT token. The another case that can be is that if the user is not valid, then most likely, if you remember, if you have used in your traditional Sitecore XP system, we had the flexibility to show the different error messages, like the email that does not exist or the password is not valid, or even if the user tries multiple times to do the login, the user was automatically getting locked. So all of these scenarios also we were able to cover it in our custom API, and this is just to make sure that the end user who is going to log in into the new site does not see major flow changes, and it is all smooth, and the same kind of process is being followed in the new site also.
Yeah. Now let's come little more closer to the actual demo and scenario. Now the first challenge that we had was because the API, creating token-based API is a separate challenge, and then having all those users from XP to XM box was another challenge. Now let's talk about what. So when we actually faced with this issue, we kind of started researching, okay, what are the ways we can get those users into the new XM, because we are already having a core DB, so there are possibilities, because if there are no schema changes, we can just lift and shift all those users. But now the question was how we can do that. Now, so there are three actual ways, proposed by Sitecore as well. So one is, when serializing a user. So now if you can go to the Sitecore and we'll show you. And the purpose of showing you this is that you can at least, get to know that, okay, what are the possible ways and what are the drawbacks of it and what were the reason that we did what we did. Now, if you see this here, serialized user. So this is the first way using which you can get all the users serialized. And it will work when you do a serialized user. What it will do is you will be able to select multiple users, and then it will create the serialization folder under your app_data folder in DuckDuckGo root, and then it will create all the users.user file. But it's not feasible for do it for like 2.5 lakhs users, right? So it was almost impossible for us to do that. Now, even if we would have done that, one of the main drawback is that it will reset the password of the user. Now we had to keep the password same so that we don't need to do anything and they should be able to log in. So this is possible approach, but we had to deny this approach because of this limitation. Another approach is when you go to a package manager on the same screen. Yeah, when you go to a desktop. So now we use the standard, package wizard, and over there you will have security accounts. Now here also you will be able to see all the users. So this is our source database, right? So from source database, what we can do is we can package all the 2 lakhs user and install them on the new box. But again, the same limitation, it will not retain the password. Now that's where, we were able to figure out, what are the ways we can do it. Now, before we denied 2 of this approach, we found out that there is another page called transfer user password. If you can go to the slide. This is the page given by Sitecore. Maybe, this is for because, they knew that this challenge is going to come. So what it provides is you download this page and then you upload it from your CM box. And then when you hit the admin/transfer user password, by default, it won't exist. You'll need to download it and put it there to be able to work. When you do that, it will allow you to select the user and transfer the password. So that means if your password is ABCDEF, when you do transfer, it will have a 2 connection string to the 2 databases and it will transfer all those users there. But the drawback was that you can only do 1 user at a time. I mean, for doing it for 2.5 lakhs user, it is impossible. So we also, AB also tried one of the way where you can go to the page and ASPX page, and if you can enable multiple selection. But I mean, doing it for 2.5 lakhs, there was no way we can do it. So the approach, that we found that we're gonna take that route is custom DB script. So that means because we have 2 databases, source and destination, we know how to create scripts. There are good scripts available on the internet. We will show them. We will mention them in the reference slide because from that's where also we took the script and we changed it as per our need because we had Azure SQL. We'll also talk about that. What are the challenges in Azure SQL? But all those scripts we kind of took and then we modified as per our need. And that's where, we were able to figure out the solution that, how to transfer all the users from one box to another box, retaining the password. So we did this exercise multiple times on our local boxes, multiple times on dev boxes. And then we created a documentation that, okay, if you want to do it, do step 1, do step 2, do step 3. And then on production, you should be just good because, we successfully did this for multiple times. So these are the possible approaches. You can, migrate the user as per your need. Now let's talk very quickly about the challenges we had in this, right? So there are 2 versions. So one SQL Server, which you get in your on-prem is a different version of SQL, and then what you have in Azure PaaS SQL, right? So initially, when we got a script, we ran it in our local box, but now local box was a different version of SQL. Every script was, working just fine. Now the same thing we did on dev. The issue that we ran into was that because the Azure SQL doesn't allow to fire the cross database scripting. Now we were again blocked there because if if that SQL server is not allowing us to fire a query, what are the ways we can, unblock ourselves? So this is the error that in red you see, it will give error something like this, that, hey, this is not supported in this version of SQL. And then we had to find a way. There are Azure specific guidelines available. So basically what we needed to do is we needed to first in the source table, that is in XP database. First, what we needed to make was that we'll create an external table. So if you are not aware about external tables are something which you find under tables and then external tables. So external tables are something that they can reference the original table with the same data inside it. So that means if you want to do a cross DB, you need to first create those external table, move the data from native to those tables, and then you can fire the query using those external table as well as your destination database, which is XM, to transfer the get data from external table and put it into the XM tables. So that's what we did. And so if you, and these are the steps for it. So we are going to have a detailed blog for that. We will share it, via Perficient or LinkedIn or somewhere relating to this session, that these are the blogs, steps, everything. But so what you need to do is you need to first create a master encryption key. So master encryption key is, a key which is responsible to make sure that, it is your user is able to write into the external tables. And then you create external tables using that, and then you run insert script in external table, and you are good to go. And if you we can just visit this gist, and then I'll show you. Yeah, so if you see the line from line number 8 to line number 13, if you can go back. Yeah, so if you see line number 8 to line number 12, these are the steps where using which you are creating a master encryption key. And then identity, line number 11 and 12, identity means SA. So that means if I'm performing on dev SQL, my remote SQL, it will be the username of that, and secret means the password of that particular database. And then if you see, scroll down further, these are the standard steps given by Azure to create the external table. So if you see, every table of the membership will be referenced here. ASP.NET membership. Then if you see line number 65, ASP.NET paths, ASP.NET personalized all users. So all the ASP.NET membership table will be created as an external table. This is the prerequisite if you are on SQL. So that's what we did. And then we will actually show now in the demo how we did everything. So I will just hand it over to. Before that, anything you'd like to add, Devi?
Nope. Yeah, good.
No.
Okay, so what we will do is we will first go to the SQL server and so I hope you guys are able to see this SQL server also.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what we will first do is we will get an idea of what this database are. So if you see this,
yeah. Before that, just so why we did that user migration exercise was because now users are migrated, and now we want to test them using the API. That we are getting those users which were migrated. Currently the scenario is AB will explain that we have a XM database and then XP database which is old, and which is a fresh database. So he will walk you through which scripts we ran, and then now API will be using those new tables, migrated user tables, and then still they are getting the database to make sure that the nodes are connecting.
Yep. Okay, so if you see here, we have the core source database. So basically, this core source database is our production database where we are holding the 2.5 lakh users already. Then this one is our actual database, which is a core database of the fresh XM instance. So now before going to show anything else, I would first like to show a select query on the total number of users that we currently have. So if you see, we only have 4 to 5 default users that Sitecore creates by default in any of the fresh instance. And if I fire the query on the source database for the same able, you will be able to see that there are more than 2 lakh users here. So if I run this query, you will be able to see that the count is 2 lakh. So now what after the migration of our scripts, what will happen is all these 2 lakh users will also be in our fresh instance code database. Before that, we would also see in Sitecore user manager that we are not able to see those users, and we are only able to see the fresh instance user that Sitecore creates by default. So now if I go here, before doing that, I would also like to show that because of the purpose of this demo, what we did is we created few Sitecore users in our source database and a few external users in our source database. The purpose of this is after the migration of the script, what we will do is we will be using this same credentials, that is the username and password, and we will be able to log in into our XM fresh instance, because the migration has ensured that all these users have been migrated to our destination port database. So I will just quickly go to the script now. So we have already uploaded this specific script on the list, and the links will be shared. So I'm just copying the required script, and I will be going into the SQL server. And so now here there is one point that we have to ensure that if you see all the membership table, the where the data needs to be migrated have been included in this specific script. And before executing it, I would also like to share that what D had explained was in relation to the Azure SQL Server. Now, because we are on the local environment, we are having the source and the destination table both on in the same SQL server. We are directly able to do this, but obviously when you are doing a migration, you will not have this scenario. You will be having two different SQL servers, and that is where that external table script will come into picture. One more point to notice here is about the application ID. So if I open the core database again, there is a table of applications, and we will be having an application ID. Now this application ID is something that is version specific. So all the 10.3 versions would be having the same version application ID. All the 9.x versions or 9.3 or 9.2 would be having the same application ID. So what we have to do is we have to copy this application ID, and before running this specific script, we have to ensure that the old application ID that we had in our core in our source database has to be updated in the destination database also. So we would be ensuring that set application ID equal to the old core database, and we update it with the application ID that we will be having in the fresh instance. So now we are all set to run this migration script. Before running it, we will just ensure that it will be parse it. So we are good. The queries have been passed, and now we will be executing it. So the execution is in process, and normally it takes around 30 to 35 seconds for this execution. But you must be noticing that the other two ways that we had, where the users could have been serialized, or we could have been creating the packages, those would be like so much time consuming processes. And in this process, we are literally migrating 2 lakh, more than 2 lakh users in just 30 to 45 seconds. So that is one of the major advantage of using this approach for the migration. So if you can see the users have been migrated, now we will again fire the select query on the membership table on the new database, that is the destination code database. And now if you see, if you can just fire the count query, you will be able to see that instead of the 5 users that came in the fresh instance, you have been added with all the users that were existing in your source database. Now if we go to Sitecore also, and if we just do if we just open this user manager dialog again, you will be able to see that the users, instead of 5 users, all the 2 lakh or the more than 2 lakh users have been migrated. So this is one of the advantage. And now we will also see that I will just log out from this particular instance because I'm currently logged in as an admin. And before running the script, I had already told that we have ensured that there are some predefined users already created in our source database. And now we will be using the same user and the password, which ideally should allow us to log in because the user migration activity has been performed. So if I do a login, you are saying that in our new XM system, we are able to log in with the same user. This was in relation to the Sitecore users. Now we will be actually having the walkthrough of the login API and plus our custom APIs that we have created. So if I quickly go to the Postman service, so here you can see that this is the Postman service where we have created a few APIs for this demo sessions. We will also be walking through the code of it. Now, if you see this is the main API, that is the user login API, which is responsible to first of all validate the user, validate the credentials of it, and if it is a valid user, it will be returning us the JWT token. So if you see, if I enter an invalid email, this API itself is going to return me an email address does not exist, and we can now show this message in any of the front end app, and this will be having the same scenario that we had in our XP environment also. And same thing applies for the password also. So if I apply any wrong password, it will be telling us that the password is not okay, and you can show the same message to the end user. Now, if we provide the valid credentials, now because the user has been migrated from the old code database to the new code database, I will be able to do the required login, and the JWT token would be generated for this specific user. So if you see, the API has responded, and now we have a valid JWT token, and we can also show different success messages. Now again, this is in terms of the requirements and the customizations that we want to do, how we want to ensure that the XP and XM remains the flow remains the same, only the backend is changing. So now, as we have seen this user login API, we will go into the code also to see the quick walkthrough of it. So this is the API that we have, and if we go to the implementation of it, we will be saying that first, as we saw that we first check that whether the user exists or not. Yeah, so this is the configuration settings that we already saw in the slide. We had enabled the token authorization, then we had provided the symmetric signing key and the security key that we have provided in the connection string. So if you see the connection string, you are having the security key. And as I said, this is something that is mandatory while providing the value of the connection string. So now again, going on to the login API. So if we go to the implementation of the login API, the first check that will be happening is to check whether this user exists or not. If it does not exist, then we are sending a message. And if the user exists, then we also had a mechanism to ensure that when we are transmitting the username and password, because any of the front end app is going to send us the details of username and password, and because it is going to happen over the network, we had to ensure that there is some kind of encryption and decryption being applied to especially to the password field. So we implemented our own encryption decryption. With the encryption happens in the front end in the Parcel app using the Next.js, and the same algorithm we have used in our API also to decrypt the password. This also ensures that the password is not visible in the API calls that happens over the network. And then we finally do the login of Sitecore. Now this login tells us whether the user actually exists in Sitecore or not. Please note that the login that we are currently looking at has nothing to do with the token, but this is to ensure that the user exists, because first check that we did is we ensured that the email existed. If the email did not exist, we return a message. Now we are doing a Sitecore login. Then if the result is not okay, we are ensuring that whether the user is locked or not, or if this condition is not satisfied, then the final thing is that the password is invalid. Now, if everything is valid, we will be finally going to the generate token method. And this is where the JWD token gets generated. So if you see, we have called the generate token method of the token provider, and we have passed the claims here. So by default, as I said, the Sitecore only passes the user ID, but you can pass some additional information in this, and then you can use that information whenever you are getting the same token in the subsequent API calls. So this is the walkthrough of login API. Now we will also quickly have a walkthrough of the two more APIs, which is create article and fetch article. So first we will go to the fetch article, and I am directly calling this API without a valid token. So what it will do is it will first return me an invalid token message. Now we again go to the login API. We copy the newly token that has been generated here. We go to the fetch API, and now when we pass a valid token, you will be able to see that the data that already existed in our custom DB in our production environment with the same user ID is still intact, and still we are able to retrieve the same information. And using this API, we can ensure that this information is getting displayed in the new environment also. Now, in old environment, we had the session, we just checked the session and we fetched the user ID from the session. But in new environment, we do not have that. That is why this token picture came in, and that is how it will be. It is now connecting the different outs, right? So now we will also have a walkthrough of get article list API. So this is the API, and in all the subsequent API calls except the login, the first line that is going to be is to validate the token. So if you go into the validate token method, we just fetch the token from the request header, and then we have the provider validate token method, which tells us whether the token is valid or not. So what we do is if the token is valid, then the API call continues, and if the token is not valid, we just return an error message that it is an invalid token. And this the then we fetch the claims from the token. So now if it is a valid token, we have this get user claims method. And if we go into that specific method, we again fetch the token from the request header, and basically it is going to return us an enumerable security claims object. So when we iterate through it, we are going to get the details of all the attributes that we have added into the claims. For our demo, we had added the user ID and the user email. So we have that. Now using these claims, we will be ensuring that all the communication that is going to happen with our custom database, no matter it can be through the store procedure, or it can be through the entity framework, whatever technology that we have, we just needed the unique identification that this specific user has requested this specific API, so that we can return the details of those particular we can return the details of particles that are belonging to that specific user only. So this is the walkthrough of get article API, and finally we will have a walkthrough of our create article API also. So again, going to the Postman's server, again I'm just copying this newly created token in my create article API. And in the body, we are just passing a random article ID. Now, this can be a custom object where we want to store multiple information, and basically all this information is going into our custom VB. We have just kept unfilled for the sake of the demo. And now if I click on send button, this is basically going to create the article in the custom database, and the API call was successful. We also have a success message that can be used to be shown in the front end. Now we have added a new article whose value was 110. And now if we again go to the fetch article call, where we have articles named as 101, 102, and 103, which is belonging to this specific user. Now if I again call this API, we will have an additional value of 110, which we had just inserted from the create article API. So now we will have a walkthrough of create article API. So the first line, as I said, is going to ensure that the token is valid or not. If it is valid, then only the further execution of the API happens. Then we will be getting the claims. And once we have the claim, we have the article IDs also. And then we will be calling the repository communication method. Again, it can be anything, entity framework, store procedure, anything. And in this way, we can ensure that the data is being saved to our custom database. So I believe that is all from the demo perspective. D, do you want to add something?
No, that's fine. If you can go to the PPT. Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Avi. It was a detailed one. So we would like to mention these references. So most of the information you will find here as well, because our research, when we did, we got a lot of insights from this particular references. So kudos to them. I mean, if they wouldn't have written the article, probably we wouldn't have reached here. So we just want to say thanks to them and mentioning them here. You can also go through these links and find more detailed information as well. Of course, we are gonna share our code and whole gist and everything that we have. But I think that's it for now. So basically, before moving on to the question, now what AB was showing was that all this API now you can relate to it. Now on front end app, you can have your maybe next auth or something plugged in, which we already have done, but maybe we will create a part 2 for it, so you can connect the dots, how front end is taking shape and how front end can talk to this backend API. And you can have a login screen and a dashboard page, which is completely decoupled in a headless manner. So that was the all the insights that we wanted to give, so that you don't spend the time that we spent in our research and finding out the solution. Thank you. Any questions?
So Talking about the session, Daivagna and Akshay, you did a great job. I can tell you that the detailed explanation about the things that you use, like the JWT tokens, and also the required, the way you explain the code and the architecture diagram, like that was spot on. It was nice. I do not see anything in the chat window, and I do not blame the audience for that because but because the session was very informative. You walked us through each step of it in a very intuitive and clear manner. So I
Thank you.
hope this the information that you all shared comes handy to us, because now with Sitecore taking the headless way, we'll see a lot of like migrations and upgrades wherein we might come across such a scenario that we have to migrate all the users, and then have the front end app needs to authenticate them, and then there needs to be a seamless communication through both the front end and back end. So maybe this will come handy to us then. So with
Yeah.
that being said, no
Neha,
questions from the audience, just one call. If anybody has got a question, you can put it in the chat window now. Or if you want to like ask Akshay and Daivagna in person, you can do that as well. Connect them with them on LinkedIn and Slack, and I'm sure. Okay, we have a hand raise here from Vikrant. So go ahead, Vikrant.
okay. This is not specifically related to the migration that you did, but I wanted to ask if is there any recommendation that how many number of users that we can keep in Sitecore? Because your number was too large, 2 lakhs. Should we go for a separate authentication provider for like in such cases?
So to answer that, because it is using the power of SQL, right, and the membership framework, I think the users can be like many, because SQL Server is able to handle a lot of load. So I don't think so there is any cap on how much users you can have. You can have n number of users because those are just stored in the membership table, and then it all depends on how you write your queries to get the data. But I don't think so, because with 2 lakhs users also the communication is so seamless that you also saw that your query was returning results in fraction of seconds. So I don't think so you will run into any issues with that.
All right. Thanks.
Anybody else? Any question? All right, I take that as a no, and will continue saying that if you want to, if you have any other questions related to this, or if you'd like to talk about your problems with Daivagna and Akshay, you can definitely reach out to them on LinkedIn and Slack. I'm sure that they will reply there. And if you have any queries for the Sitecore user group Nagpur, you can reach out to any of the organizers, me, Vikrant, Sumit, and Mahima on LinkedIn or on Slack, and we'll be there for you. Now we come to the end of the session. SUG Nagpur would like to thank Akshay and Daivagna again for sharing their experience with all of us in such great detail, and to all the attendees for sparing some time from their busy schedules and showing your support and gaining something out of this. Thank you so much. And we'd like to also thank our supporting our organization Perficient for supporting our event. Also, please note that we'll be sharing the recording of our session on LinkedIn. Like the link will be there, and we'll be uploading this on YouTube. So if you want to revisit this conversation or want to share this again, share this with someone who can use this piece of information, please keep an eye on LinkedIn and our YouTube channel. Thank you all again, and see you all at our next event. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.